Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, I arrived 15 minutes early to the Kleptomania convention, but the seats were already all taken. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at the G.I. Joe deck building game Silent Interlude expansion from Renegade Game Studios.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
The G.I. Joe deck building game Silent Interlude expansion for G.I. Joe deck building game from Renegade Game Studios has two different missions and two different ways to play your game of G.I. Joe deck building game. The first mission is the Silent Interlude mission. Now, this is based, I believe, on a comic storyline in which Snake Eyes has to go on a secret mission solo in order to rescue Scarlett from a evil Cobra castle. So essentially, what's going to happen in this solo game, which I've just played, is you go ahead and take on the role of Snake Eyes initially. Your starter cards are going to be quite different. You're not going to have any of the Joe cards you get or the comms card because, again, you're all alone. Just a number of Snake Eyes cards with various traits. You will have the Snake Eyes leader card that does have a wild trait. And it will be possible to upgrade your Snake Eyes leader into the promoted leader card. Now, this mode, as I say, is quite different. It is a solo mode. You still have the reserve card that you use normally to reserve a card between your turns, but there's some other important bells and whistles here. For instance, you're not going to use any vehicles. That is to say, you've got the Claw, which is a new card for this expansion. You can use the Claw, but other than that, you're not using vehicles, which already makes it very different from other G.I. Joe deck building game missions. Every time you put a mission out into the main deck, you're just simply going to discard it to the main deck discard pile. Now, you just play your Joe cards in front of you, and this is Snake Eyes and later Scarlett going on these missions inside this castle, trying to break in there, free Scarlett, and get out. But critically, one of the most important differences between this solo mode and the standard solo mode is because you're just playing these two Joes, Snake Eyes and Scarlett, you do not get any of the Joes when you purchase them. You do not get them into your hand, into your deck, into your discard pile. Rather, what's going to happen with these Joes you get is you place them here on the top of the reserve tile. I do it sideways to distinguish it from the cards I'm reserving. But essentially what that means is at different times during the game, you may have some of your Snake Eye starter cards that say discard this number of Joes. That is to say this cost of Joes in order to gain a wild skill. So the more Joes you place on here, the more Joes you can then discard, put in the main deck discard pile in order to get a wild skill. But also, too, promoted Scarlett, actually both Scarletts here, will have an ability where she can temporarily claim one of the skill set from one of the cards you've bought. That card then is discarded. Now, also, too, another thing that distinguishes this from a standard G.I. Joe deck building game scenario is usually there are 9 story missions. Of course, you have like the 2 random missions and the finale, the 2 random finale, the 2 random finale, and the 3 acts for 9 mission cards. Here, you just have 1 random card, then a finale, a 2nd random card of finale, and a 3rd random card of finale, so meaning you just have 6 story cards to get through here. Typically, the story card values are less than you see in some of the other GI Joe deck building game missions because it's harder to get the number of dice you're going to need to defeat these missions. You're also going to have a new Destro and Snake Eyes card, which you're going to use in this mission. Now, there's also something important here, and that is you have the silent token, and this can flip to the noisy token. You want to be silent, you want to be silent, you want to be stealthy in this mission. So what's going to happen is, as you're playing the game, if ever you go up against the story mission, you're going to go ahead and flip a card from the main deck so that it is visible, so that you can see its cost number. Then, if you have any Cobra operatives, those are battalions, troopers, officers that are out anywhere on the in the play area, you roll a die for each one of them. For every hit, you're going to subtract one from the cost of that card. Now, you've already started your mission, your first card. You can choose to put more cards out, but if you put more cards, after you look at the modified cost, if you have more cards than that modified cost, you must flip this to noisy, and if you are noisy, it automatically adds a +1 to every story mission. There may be some other bells and whistles with card interactions that reflect the silent or noisy mode you are in. If at the end of your turn you haven't put the card you flipped over into the lineup, you go ahead, you put that into the main deck discard pile. Now, when Destro comes up at the end of every round, he's going to be making you put a card aside. So it's churning through this deck very quickly. But then also, too, if the new Storm Shadow card is out, at the start of your turn, you must discard one of your starter cards. So if you can succeed in getting through all of the story mission cards for Silent Interlude, you win this mission. Now, there's another game mode here for the other mission, the Traitor Within. Essentially, it's a hidden traitor mission, and it requires 2 to 4 players, and one of those players may be a hidden traitor. Now, at the beginning of the game, you have a number of loyalty cards. You're each dealt 1 red Cobra card and 1 blue Joe card. You place them face down. Then everyone else is dealt an additional loyalty card that nobody knows what it is. Players can look at their cards, but then they must shuffle them and place them face down. So even they don't know what they are. Now, they know whether they are a loyal Joe or an evil traitor of Cobra, but they don't know which cards say what. And that's going to be very important as the game progresses. Now, instead of precision strikes for your complications, you're going to draw accusation cards, and the person who is leading the story mission and would draw those precision strikes is going to take one of those accusation cards and place it in front of one of the Joes. Now, these are this idea of you're trying to determine whether or not that Joe is loyal. But you place that one in front of them just for now. This becomes a side mission, but it's a side mission that anybody can partake in. On somebody's turn, they can declare that they're going to attack somebody's accusation card. They're going to go after somebody's accusation card. If you defeat the accusation card, then that player must reveal one of their loyalty cards. Now remember, they've got 3, one of each, and then one determining whether or not they are good or evil. So they can flip over one of their loyalty cards. The person making the defeating the accusation, they can decide which one they want to see. Then if they reveal a loyal Joe card, then your threat meter goes down by 1 space. Now, if you're on a story mission and you fail the story mission, then the Joe who led that story mission, the player who led that story mission, rather, is going to put an accusation card in front of themselves. Now, also, just to keep everyone unsure about what cards you're playing or have been played, you're going to place your discard pile face down and put a token on it stating that is your discard pile. That way you can keep it separate from your draw pile. But this is another way to keep other players unsure of what you're doing. Now, the story missions in the Traitor Within usually have 1p, 1 player, 1 complication per player. So each of you is going to reveal 1 complication card when you get to those story missions. Now, once a traitor has been discovered, that is to say, somebody has 2 red cards, loyalty cards, we know they're a traitor from Cobra, things start to play a little differently. All accusation cards then are put away, and precision strikes from the complications, they're resolved as normal. The traitor's promoted Joe card now becomes a Cobra officer and is placed in the play area. The hidden traitor will draw sabotage cards equal to the act that you are in or have just completed, and from that point forward, on each of their turns, they will draw 1 sabotage card. The hidden traitor cannot participate in any other group missions in the game. Now, the loyal Joes can attempt to rehabilitate the leader. Essentially, they're going after the officer card. They're checking their skills, and if they can go ahead and they can defeat that card, then the player who was a traitor now becomes a loyal Joe once again. Now, when Joes go on story missions, the traitor, if he's an active traitor, he can go ahead and play the sabotage cards to make things more difficult for the Joes during that mission. Players are going to go ahead. They're going to try to defeat these missions, deal with the traitor, purchase cards, and defeat the story missions. If the Loyal Joes are able to defeat the final story card, then they win. G.I. Joe deck building game, Silent Interlude. Okay, so first of all, I played the solo mode version, the Snake Eyes Silent Interlude mission. I played that twice. I lost once, and I have won once. I actually just played my winning game here a moment ago. It's very interesting. It's interesting in that a lot of the regular things you come to rely on or think about when you think of the GI Joe deck building game don't apply here. Specifically, vehicles. That's very different. That you're not using vehicles in the same way you think of when you think of the regular GI Joe deck building game. And it's interesting. It's you're just playing your cards normally, so you don't really have to worry about capacity and those sorts of things. But you do have to worry about when you're going after the story mission, the silence versus the noisy. You do have to worry about that because you've got to flip that card. That's probably the most randomy part of the game for me because you don't know what this top card is going to be, and that's going to determine how many Joes you can put on it, minus whatever Cobra operatives are out there if they get hits. So that's kind of random to me. Now, what's nice is if you promote your Snake Eyes leader card, he, as soon as you play him, automatically flips noisy back to silent. So that's pretty cool, but it may take you a little while to get there. The other thing that's really odd here, I shouldn't say odd, but different, is how you use your other Joes. You place them in the reserve, and then you kind of spend them according to their cost to activate wild skills on some of the Snake Eyes' starter cards. So that's something else that's kind of odd and kind of different. The game plays, usually when I play the G.I. Joe deck building game, I play it kind of two-handed. And here I was just playing with a single deck. Of course, is the way you got to play it with Snake Eyes. And it's a little different to me. I kind of do prefer playing, with two decks. But this was interesting. I really like the story. I really like going into the castle, trying to find Scarlett. One thing that's interesting, though, is the first couple of missions, you go after it, and they are Snake Eyes only, right? And then once you free Scarlett, the next couple of missions are Scarlett only. So that's kind of frustrating when you're on those kind of Scarlett only missions and you're trying to cycle through your deck trying to find Scarlett. But nevertheless, it's interesting, it's fun, it's a challenge. You're worried, of course, about the threat meter. A lot is forcing that to go up. But you're also too worried about your deck because if the deck runs out, you're out. If Destro comes out, he's just going to be spending cards through your deck there. So that's another interesting aspect of the game. I liked this mode. I thought it was pretty fun. I thought it was a decent challenge. There is an expert mode if people find this one too easy, which I did not. I did win it, and I can't say it was horribly close, but I was starting to feel the pressure. And I think if a few turns had gone wrong, I could very well have lost this game. But if there's some people that want to heighten it up, there is an expert mode for it, so you can have a bit of a more challenge. So generally, I like that story mission. Now, the other night, Ray and Mike and I played the Traitor Within, the hidden traitor scenario. And the first thing I want to remark about that is I really, really enjoyed the method of that. That is to say, the method of the traitor cards. I really liked how you each have, one loyal, one bad, and then you get another random one, and you push them down, and then you're trying to uncover those as the game goes by to figure out who's loyal and who's not. I thought that was very clever. I've never seen a hidden traitor game that did quite that thing before. I'm always skeptical when you get a cooperative game that the base game is cooperative when they try to add a hidden traitor element into it, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I felt like it worked here. I thought it was pretty good. But all told, the hidden traitor mechanics and scenario in that game were pretty fun. I like the accusation cards and how they function, and it was fun playing a game that added a healthy dose of paranoia. G.I. Joe deck building game can be a very difficult game on its own, and adding the idea that somebody's potentially working against you is terrifying. But I really enjoyed it. I really had fun with it. Now, let me just say this. It's probably not my favorite G.I. Joe expansion. Of course, I think the best G.I. Joe deck building game expansion was the Raise the Flag campaign expansion. To me, that was just awesome, my favorite. But even excluding that, I think I still may like the first two expansions a little bit better, Cold Snap and the Serpentor one. I think maybe I like those ones a little better. So if you're looking to get, I would not recommend this as your first expansion. I'd say get some of these other expansions first. But if you're somebody that really loves the G.I. Joe deck building game, and I do, and the more I play it, I'm thinking this may be G.I. Joe deck building game maybe a top 10 game of all time for me. It's something I really got to think about, but I freaking love the G.I. Joe deck building game. In the few years that I've been playing it, every time I play it, I just love it. I love the theme, I love the IP, and I love the gameplay. It is so smart, so clever. I love the dice and what that brings to it. It's just a phenomenal game. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to recommend this game. I'm going to go ahead and say buy it. But again, I would probably recommend some of the other expansions for first expansions. But if you love this game like I do, you're definitely going to want to pick it up. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history, fun things like that. I'd ask you to please subscribe to that channel. That would mean a lot to me. Please leave a thumb for this video on Board Game Geek, and if you do really appreciate the content we bring you on this channel, I'd humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. You know, the other day, my doctor friend asked me if I wanted to go to an open mic night. I said, stand-up comedy? He said, no, autopsy.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Do not screw this up.